is interested in identifying the opportunities and raising the economic opportunities for Uganda's external relationship with other countries. We know, just in simple language, you cannot make it alone. You need a neighbor and you need a connection. But again, as you deal with the neighbor, you must also be very careful, because some neighbors may come and take what belongs to you. And we are happy to have been joined by one of also a good expert in banking and business investment, Mr. Alex Mwezi. He doubles as a former aspirant MP, Kabale Municipality. It's not a title, but it's an event that we cannot forget.
It can't be washed away.
Yes, can't be washed away. We are still continuing with our dear friend here, and want to share with you Ghana's Major Retired Awik Pora is the Director of External Affairs at the NRM Secretariat. While going for a commercial break, and you dear viewers, the reason why we get interested in such a topic of discussion, it's in 3 dimensions. One, to look at what do we gain when we spend the government resources, especially to deal with these other countries, bilateral, and also multilateral, as you stated it. Then, in another aspect, also, what do we gain from these countries when they do have exchanges, either in this relationship, mostly which is referred as integration, economic integration. And then number 3, what may be our fears? Because we have some countries that have had relationship with other countries, and the kind of way that was political, economic, the story changes. The interests of these foreign countries is something that I think also we will analyze in our debate, our discussion rather. From there, then we'll be able to get recommendations to know whether Uganda should continue maybe to deal with some countries or be careful with others. I stated this, you recommended China to, and also the relationship to be basing on how the 2 countries come and negotiate their dealing. I took note of that, sir. But while I noted your statement, it remained very much of a need to fill a gap, an existing gap of some countries, especially I'm not against basically I use China because China has become visibly known in the African context to investment, which gives the government loans at a higher, I can say at high interest rate, the way how they do projects, and you find that we are indebted under another country with a huge debt that may take this country to recover from like more 20 years. Some have been either speculations, others they are reality. Some will even speculate that Lake Victoria, it was sold to the Chinese. And then we go also to countries now in Africa, like Ethiopia. We look at, by the time we relate with Ethiopia, what do we gain? And we have a lot to learn from that. Sir, you can conclude the other first part, then we shall welcome Mr. Alex.
I want to conclude the first part by mentioning the specific countries that you have mentioned, but also I want to say the nature of benefits. Now, first of all, in the issue of China, I know it is a matter of debate, but I want to state that any discussion between 2 countries is a matter of sovereignty. Under the global system and international arrangement and bilateral relationships, there are 193 countries on earth. 193, and all these 193, the presumption is that they are all sovereign and equal. So when you enter into a relationship, whatever nature of negotiation, it is on equality. Now, China puts across what they have, or we go to China for what they have, and we should negotiate. I don't have data here and comparative nature to say this loan from China was more expensive than this one, say from European Union or from Germany or any other, in any bilateral arrangement. So I would wish to talk with facts. So I don't want an ESA. But experience has it that time and again we have gotten infrastructural arrangement money from China. Whether this is good or bad, but we need to look into detail And as I said, I don't have the data here. But the basic thing is we do it from a sovereignty basis. So it is a choice. The other thing that you mentioned was Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a country in Africa. Ethiopia is a country which is very committed to Pan-Africanism. It believes so much in the unity of the African market and African people. Actually, it has hosted the headquarters of African Union since time immemorial, from the time of OAU and now AU. So it's one continent, one country in Africa that we can't wash away. In Uganda, they deal with us in terms of the airline services. A big number of nationals and our guests coming to Uganda are flown by Ethiopian Airways. Ethiopia also operates the economy through communities. There are a lot of communities in Uganda, and they are happy to be here. They have married themselves, they go to school, they have children. I actually don't know whether they will even think of going back because they are happy. So we have a lot of economic relationship and historical deep connection with Ethiopia. So that explains. Now, what we sell there, it depends on, I know there are many of us who go there. I was in Ethiopia about a month ago, and I saw Ugandans who are really transacting things in Ethiopia. I was in Ethiopia myself, and I know Ethiopians who come this way. Now, the cultural aspect and the African unity aspect is so engraved that they actually have brothers and sisters. Now, permit me to talk about other benefits like the multilateral. Of course, we know very well that when you go, you have organizations like IMF, World Bank. These are multilateral organizations. Bretton Woods, if you know, like institutions, they offer money also. And it's the same thing like you talk with the Chinese. It depends on how you negotiate it, how the loan is agreeable to you. Many times we have had that they give us conditionalities, that the conditions are not favorable, this and that, but still it is us, the sovereign states, to exercise our sovereignty and take what we can and what we can't. So you have the IMF. Finally, the other benefit of economic interest is you have instruments like Financial Intelligence Authority. A group of countries come together and said, we want to prohibit wrong flow of money. Because not all money is wanted. We want money, but not all money. Wrong money should not flow around the world, either to terrorists or some people stealing their friends' money. So to control that, states enter into arrangement under Financial Intelligence Authority arrangement. And they have an instrument, and that instrument gives obligation to states that if you are going to operate with us under this, please enact in your laws in Parliament a law that prohibits this. And that is why now we have Financial Intelligence Authority to regulate that much as we are really eager to get money from abroad, either by individuals or by the state or by companies, please let it be genuine, useful money, so that there's no money laundering or money going into wrong hands. So, and all these are things that we do with our fellow countries abroad. Because remember, our topic is Uganda's relationship with other countries. So other countries are saying, therefore, if you deal with us, if we're going to get money from you, and if you're going to get money from us, it must be a lawful system of getting money. Right. And how do we do that? We institute this. Go to your parliament, legislate a law, and make it lawfully money entering and exiting your country. So there are various aspects of our economic benefits with the rest of the world.
Thank you. I'll be coming back to you, and I'll now come closer. We are looking at the East African Community Bloc. We'll also be looking at especially what we've invested in the last, I will call the years since we began to go to Somalia, and even where we register some losses of our jets while flying to Somalia. And even right now in Uganda, we register serious, entrance of Somalia who migrated from Somalia, and they are here. Some either regarded as refugees, or regarded as either that do business. And we'll also be looking at possibly how best we can mitigate in any way some of the challenging relationships that we've gone through with the neighborhood countries that affected our economy. We'll be coming back to you on that point. Mr. Alex, you heard it now all. We are looking at whether we should continue to invest in this relationship with the other countries. Some countries which we're related with, they seemingly look to have put Uganda at a serious economic tax to pay their debts. And the economic deal, it should have been for us, to the best of my knowledge, provoking, I use the word provoking, or urging Ugandans, the government of Uganda and Ugandans, to do much more production and then we go for export. Because one of the theory that either it is theory or practical, the head of state say no, the relationship with these countries, we want to have market. You know, no one talks about that language. What is the reality that drives us towards that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Doctor, for that preamble. Good evening, our viewers. Thank you so much, Major, for your deliberations. I'm happy to be here once again to discuss such a very interesting topic that affects all of us. I found Major talking about the benefits of integrating the gains out of our interactions with our neighbors. We must appreciate that we are not an island. Uganda is not an island. We need each other. We live in an ecosystem where we must work together. We must support one another. And I want to agree with our president that Uganda alone is not a sufficient market for what we produce. You've heard recently the challenges we've had with we have produced more sugar, we have produced more maize, and we are always having issues around where do we put this maize, where do we put this sugar.
Stop a bit, I will go on.
Yes.
The maize which you are talking about, it's just not too far from now, where we know that our maize was disqualified from crossing to Kenya. And our export levels, according to the statistics we have, is at a rate of 19% vis-a-vis the imports which are over 23%. Now the export rate in terms of percentage, which is about it's at 77.
You're right, Doctor. We have discussed here before that given the nature of our setup and where we are coming from, by and large, we are still largely net importers of a number of items. But we must also appreciate that there are efforts for us to diversify and expand our export base. You agree with me that you have seen over time our mineral exports increasing, for example, gold. You agree with me that you have seen a number of manufactured goods, for example, cement and steel exports increase. I agree with you, there is still a challenge in us improving and strengthening exports. And that calls for everybody, including people who are listening to us, that there is work for us to do, for us to, for example, to first produce goods, produce services that we need as a country. Then after you have produced goods and services that you need as a country, then you can consider exporting. So we need to work hard as a country, and for those who are listening to us, there is a lot of work for us to do to build that base. You talked about the issue of loans. Borrowing per se is not bad. What are you borrowing for? And if you analyze our debt portfolio that stands at over 70 trillion as of today, much of that debt has gone into infrastructure. We are talking about roads, we are talking about electricity, we are talking about airport, we're talking about basic infrastructure. And the purpose of this infrastructure is to, for example, open up the country, reduce the cost of doing business. If I was taking 6 hours to move from Kabale to Kampala, can I use 4 hours? That has an impact on the cost of someone doing business. So that has been the purpose of borrowing. But there are also challenges. There is a debate on China's aggressive approach towards Africa in terms of lending, that, for example, China does not take so much issues of human rights, issues of corruption seriously, and they just lend the way it is. There is a lot of debate around that. But like Major said, the issue is about, as you go into these negotiations, what are your interests as a sovereign state? And are you willing to advance your interests, and where they cannot be accommodated, are you ready to say, no, I cannot take on this loan? Because there are various sources of loans in the international lending.
We are doing very well, but we are still wanting to unveil what looks to be a threat to some of our, stated by some of the policy analysts in this matter. The question of debate remains whether Uganda bargaining power with these other countries that we tend to relate with in terms of, economic relations is much more strong on us. Because if today I want to make a relationship with you, I should know that I can match with what it takes to go to your home, and then we maybe negotiate a deal. Number one, what we export in these other countries and what they bring to us as a country, we seem to be of a low advantage, limited advantage in terms of bargaining power in what we are producing. You have already talked about it, but it is still a serious matter. And we go, the good thing we are coming from the background of banking. Our currency with these countries, that is again, it takes us back to our level of productivity. The shilling, and it attributes to what we are facing as an inflation. The shilling vis-a-vis the currency, the foreign currencies, it looks to be every other time our shilling is fighting much more to appear, and we sweat a lot to match to that standard of balance. How can we do it better? What causes this?
Yeah, thank you so much, Doctor. We need to appreciate when you are negotiating. The starting point is, what are you bringing on table? What is the other person bringing on table? And I want to believe that we have competent negotiators. We have experienced, we have serious negotiators and bargainers in this country. But the issue is, as you negotiate, what are you bringing on table? For me, it comes back to the internal challenges that we have, that we need to tackle, we need to deal with, our own internal challenges. What are we producing as a country? What is facilitating that production, or what is hindering that production? What are we investing internally to generate production that we can bring on table and negotiate with our external parties? I have been here before and I have said, we as a country, we keep talking about economic empowerment, but do we have commercial banks owned by the government, where government can easily dictate and say, let's discuss the issue of interest rates? I know we are in a liberalized economy, but I'm one person who believes that we rushed the liberalization. So where you have a free market and there is free movement of labor and cash and money, this issue becomes, what are you bringing on the table? So for me, before we start judging and saying maybe our negotiation capacity is weak, our bargaining capacity is weak. We need to first address the internal issues. What do we bring on table as a country? For example, when we go to negotiate with Kenya, for example, on sugar, what are we bringing on table? What is the quality of your production?
Thank you, Mr. Alex. Maybe Major, you want to say something before we go for a break?
Yeah,
2 or 3 minutes.
I just want to say what you mentioned. You mentioned about what we produce vis-a-vis what we export vis-a-vis what we. I think there's an area of discussion that if you check historically, like in the 60s, the 70s and the 80s up to now, if we look like how many bags of coffee would buy a Land Cruiser, a Land Rover from UK in 1960. And as time goes on, how many bags of coffee in 1970 would buy the same Land Cruiser? And it continues on. Some analysis seem to think that with time has gone where there's north-south trading balance, not only in Uganda, is not fair. In other words, if 10 bags of coffee would buy a Land Cruiser in 1960, the same Land Rover now is costing 50 bags of coffee. So there's unfairness in as far as north-south. So both the industrialized and the south. So some of this is why other African leaders, especially President Museveni, seem to think that we are better off operating as a bloc and negotiating as a bloc, because it's not a one-man's negotiation.
Okay, thank you so much. Please keep on. Let's go for a commercial break. We'll be coming back to analyze further, to look at our commitment in the East African community, whether it promises us much more advantages than the disadvantages we suffered, especially in the management of our fiscal policy, how our financial transactions and the shilling, why our shilling continue to be of a disadvantage versus other currencies in the region. Please see you in the next session. We are still together. God bless you.